Welcome into One of One Sports, the only one for your original sports commentary and analysis. I'm John Barry, and it is Tuesday, which means we are back with another preview and predictions video for this week's college football games. We have another great slate of games coming up, so let's get into it. All right, before we get into it, couple of quick things. First, if you guys are enjoying the college football content, whether that is the predictions, whether it's the recaps, whether it's the rankings, or if you're looking for other sports content, we got an NBA video later this week previewing the start of the season. We got college basketball content coming soon. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to help me grow the channel. Any support is greatly appreciated. And then second thing, we have to address the record because it has been rough. We dropped to 25-19 after last weekend's set of games, which were absolutely brutal for predictions. It felt like everything was going wrong. We just completely missed the mark on Michigan, on Oklahoma. We thought Missouri could beat Alabama. Arizona let us down late against BYU. Everything went wrong for last week's predictions. We really need to turn it around, and we've got 6 games that we are predicting. And if you watched my ranking video, which I highly recommend if you haven't to check it out, we did our updated top 25 poll yesterday, and that included 6 top 25 matchups according to my poll, and we are previewing all 5 plus 1 non-top 25 matchup in Georgia Tech Duke. So let's get started. So the first game we want to start, and it is in that early 9 o'clock window, although for most of you that may be the noon window out here on the West Coast, though. You know, we're starting it bright and early. And I just want to say, if I told you, think like just your younger self just a few years ago, right? Think 2020 coming out of the weird pandemic year, and then I'm just going through what's happening in college football. So Georgia wins a national championship. You're like, yeah, they've been really good. Georgia wins another. Okay, Michigan, they win it. Ohio State's a power. You're like, all right, seems like college football hasn't changed that much. And then I tell you things like in 2025, Vanderbilt is favored over LSU, and Indiana's a perennial playoff team and now a national championship contender. What a time to be alive as a college football fan. The sport has been flipped upside down in so many ways. And yeah, if you told younger me that I'd be one day watch Vanderbilt be a favorite over LSU, I'd be like, what are you talking about? Getting into the actual game, though, I want to talk about if Vanderbilt's offense can scale, because statistically it's been one of the most productive offenses in the country. But we talked about this before the Alabama game. Vanderbilt was averaging 50 points a game. I think at the time they were the number 1 points per game offense. And then they play Alabama and they score 14. And LSU's defense, though the team isn't as good as Alabama, the defense for LSU is, based off everything we've seen, a better defense than what Alabama has. They have a stronger pass rush. The defensive line has been great. And though Alabama's pass defense actually may be a touch better than LSU's certainly better up front to this point in the season. So I have concerns about this Vanderbilt offense, because where was all the offensive production when you versed a top-level opponent in Alabama? It seemed to just go out the window. I will say it's not like there's some nuance to it. Vanderbilt did move the ball decently, and Diego Pavia had 2 critical turnovers that took points off the board, as both were on red zone trips, I believe. I know one was for sure. I can't remember if the interception that cost them, they were in the red zone or not. I know they were in Alabama territory. But yeah, so Vanderbilt's offense, I have questions about if it scales when playing better defenses, and LSU is one of the best defenses in the country. Then I want to talk about LSU's health issues, because there's a few of them. Caden Durham, running back, he's injured. I bet he will give it a go, but I'm not sure. And either way, LSU's probably not going to be able to run the ball. I know they had improvements this last week against South Carolina, but South Carolina is a pretty bad run defense. Vanderbilt is better than that. And LSU, over the course of the season, has shown us they are not going to be a team that can run the ball consistently at all. So even if he's healthy, it's still going to be a problem. The bigger ones in my eyes are wide receiver Aaron Anderson, your number 1 receiver. Didn't play last week. I think you might need him against Vanderbilt. He's your best threat out wide, and if you don't have him, I think that's a concern for the offense. And then finally, Garrett Nussmeier, who's just been all banged up, hasn't looked like himself compared to what he was doing last year. And the speculation is that because he's playing through some injuries, which aren't bad enough where he's not playing, but are bad enough to hamper him in game. And I buy that to an extent. I do think you can see some of the limitations where it may be injury, but he's also just making some questionable decisions week to week. There are some bad interceptions from Nuss that you just don't expect from a guy who's now has a decent amount of games under his belt, is experienced. He still makes some of those, like quote unquote rookie mistakes that he should be past at this point. And then finally, I think it's the underrated scheduling dynamic of this game, because when you say, oh, Vanderbilt's at home and it's just a morning game, right? You're like, well, Vanderbilt already doesn't have the best home field advantage, and it's not even like it's a big night game. It's the early game, so it's not going to be a raucous environment. But I think the underrated aspect is that LSU is not at home and they're not playing at night, because this LSU Tigers team has become accustomed to the night game. And we saw how that can mess up a team like Ole Miss when they play early in the window. Lane Kiffin talked about it. And LSU, it is such an advantage to play in Death Valley at home. So these South Carolina games, these Florida games where you're winning 20-10, I try to picture that. What would that be like if you didn't get the advantage of always getting to play at night in Death Valley, one of the best home fields in the country? So now instead you have to adapt to an earlier play time on the road. I think that is a much different dynamic for this Tigers team, which could certainly play a role in Vanderbilt being able to get the win. Getting into my pick here, this is a really tight one. There's a tight spread for a reason. I think it's a 2-point spread for Vanderbilt. It is sort of a game that you can see going either way. I don't think either team's going to put up a bunch of points, because I think it's hard for anyone to put up a bunch of points on LSU, and I don't think LSU has the capabilities to put up a bunch of points on pretty much anyone. So I'm thinking high teens, low 20s, probably a 3-point game, and I'm just barely going to go with Vanderbilt to the win. I think the added scheduling dynamics will help them. I think being off a bye will help them. They should be better prepared. And I think this is a team looking to respond. They feel like the Alabama game was not a representation of their best ball, specifically quarterback Diego Pavia, who had his worst game of the season. I think he responds, plays much closer to what we saw the first 5 weeks or first 4 weeks of the season instead of the Alabama game. Got a little bit too big for his britches, a little bit cocky. I think he gets back to the basics, plays his best ball, and Vanderbilt's offense is able to do enough, maybe score like 24 points, and I think that could be enough to beat LSU. I'm rolling with the Commodores here. Next up, we have Georgia Tech traveling to take on Duke. Georgia Tech, undefeated team, and has been generating a lot of hype, but this game is really, really important, and the ACC could be on the line. I think most people at this point in the season have safely assumed Miami will be in the ACC title game and that they are the best team in the ACC. But that second spot has become wide open. We know Clemson vacated it long ago. Florida State, we thought maybe could have emerged after the Alabama win. They have vacated that, and now it's really 3 teams that have emerged in this picture, and that is Georgia Tech, currently undefeated overall. Virginia, undefeated in ACC play, despite a loss to NC State, which counts as a non-conference game. Very strange. And then Duke, who despite 2 non-conference losses, also undefeated in ACC play. So those 3 teams are the top contenders to be in the ACC title game. And we know that if you're there, it's just one game. All you got to do, if you're in these power conferences, if you get there, is pull off one upset win if you're the underdog, and you'll be in the college football playoff. So these 2 teams, as strange as it sounds, especially for Duke, are very much live dogs in terms of being here at the end of the season competing for playoff spots. Now, into the actual game, not so much the narratives and importance of it, I think there's 2 drastically different competing styles here. Georgia Tech wants to run the ball, specifically with the quarterback. They are a very one-dimensional team, or at least they have been up to this point in the season. And if a team can take away Haynes King, which Wake Forest did to an well, not really. It looked like Wake Forest was going to be able to, and then they couldn't do it for the whole game. If a team can take away Haynes King, not to say he can't throw the ball or other players on their team can't beat you, but that is definitely their fastball, and those other pitches don't look quite as good for Georgia Tech. Duke, on the other hand, is a high-flying passing attack. Darian Mensah, one of the top 5 leaders in the country in passing yards, and after a couple early turnovers earlier in the season, he's played very clean football. The Duke offense has been playing its best ball recently. You look at them putting up like 45 against NC State, I believe, and 38 against Syracuse, and I think 45 against Cal. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's something like that, right? They've peaked offensively these past 3 weeks. Now you add to that, they're off a bye with extra motivation for a big game, the extra prep time at home in what is the biggest game they've had at Duke in a while for a chance to emerge, beat what is Georgia Tech in the AP poll? I think number 12, like a team ranked that high. It's a huge opportunity. They're going to want to showcase all of that. They should be playing their best ball offensively in this game. So when it comes down to the pick, I don't think Georgia Tech has what it takes to slow down this Duke offense. I don't think they've seen a passing attack this good. Clemson's probably the best passing attack they face, but Clemson's proven they don't really, their passing attack has no supporting run game and also is just wildly inconsistent and consist of mostly just throwing up the ball to really talented wide receivers. But Duke, I think, has a better passing attack than anything Georgia Tech has seen, and I expect them to put up a lot of points, at least 28, probably get into the 30s. And Georgia Tech, playing this more run-heavy game, I think may have to play out of their element, pass it a little more, and that's where I could see mistakes being made because Duke does have Vincent Anthony, one of the best pass rushers in the ACC. They have a very talented safety and cornerback group, or overall just defensive backfield, which could potentially pick off Haynes King, who when he's asked to do too much, like in the Colorado game, we can see some turnovers from him. So I think Georgia Tech maybe having to play keep up, not being able to commit so much to the quarterback run game, playing out of their element on the road in a, I won't say a hostile environment, but what should be a very excited environment. I think that all leads to a Duke Blue Devil victory. I was high on Duke in the preseason. I invested a lot of takes into saying Duke was going to be the surprise team of the country. I think I picked them to win 10 games. Not sure they're going to do that, but they're still very much a threat to emerge as a true sleeper in the ACC, and I'm still all in on it. Give me the Blue Devils to get the victory. Game number 3, maybe the biggest game of the week, and it is between two of the powerhouses in the SEC. These teams have quickly emerged as two of the favorites. Up there with, I think Alabama's there, I think Tennessee's there. We'll talk about that in a second. I think A&M's there, and then I think you're looking at Ole Miss and Georgia right now as sort of the class of the conference. The most important thing here is I think the Ole Miss firepower, because this has been one of the most explosive offenses in the country. Whether you're looking at points per game, whether you're looking at total yardage, Ole Miss is racking it up. Now, they had their first sort of hiccup on the season in a weird spot where you were at home off a bye week against Washington State and played by far, I would think, or I would venture to say, your worst game of the season. Sort of like trailing for a while, not putting up that many points early. I think you had 10 at halftime, if I remember correctly. Just a weird spot. I do think you could have maybe been looking ahead to the Georgia game, like, oh, we know we're going to beat Washington State. Georgia, and you're just not focused at all, and it's the early noon window game, and you just didn't come and bring your best ball. That's what I'm assuming. I think Ole Miss will play much better in the Georgia game, and we've seen, I don't think they've played the best defenses in the country, but we saw them put up good amounts of points, like in the 30s on Kentucky and 41 on Arkansas, and they put up 24 on a LSU defense that's really strong and honestly should have been more, and that LSU defense is probably better than this Georgia defense, which generates very little pass rush, and Ole Miss has a good O-line that protects Trinidad Chambliss, and also has a very gettable secondary, something Ole Miss is likely to exploit as they have one of the best passing attacks in the country. So Ole Miss should be able to put up a lot of points. My question is, can Georgia control the style of the game? Because went into the Tennessee game, a similar type of opposition, this high-flying passing attack offense, a little bit different than Ole Miss, but the general feeling is the same. Tennessee plays with more tempo, though Ole Miss will play fast at times, there's no doubt. And Georgia let it get into a shootout. Now, they still won that style, and Gunnar Stockton proved a lot of people wrong, including myself, who didn't think Georgia could win that type of game. They proved they could, but I still think that is less than ideal. I don't think you want to get into a shootout with Tennessee. They did. I don't think you want to get into a shootout with Ole Miss. If you let that happen again, it could bite you the second time. You escaped the Tennessee one. Don't know if you can do that again. I think you're going to want to play a more physical brand of football, control the lines of scrimmage more, run the ball, and try to keep it, instead of an upper, like high 30s, low 40s game to, a mid to high 20s game, something like 28-24. So can Georgia control the style of play is going to be important. And then finally, and this was important for me, it's the Georgia home field advantage, because this is a big game. This is, I believe, the site of College Game Day. I didn't check that. But it's obviously a massive game, and if Georgia loses that, That's your second loss on the season, second loss in SEC play. That alone would set you back a ton, right? But more importantly, that would be your second loss at home this season. And this was a Georgia Bulldogs team that had won, coming into the Alabama game, 33 consecutive games at home. It had established itself as the best home field in college football. Now, there's an argument there that it wasn't the home field advantage. It's just Georgia's really good. So Georgia was going to beat most teams anyway, and if you're playing Georgia on the road, you're even less likely to win. So it was just a product of how good Georgia was. That is one school of thought. But it's hard for me to believe because on paper, I do like Ole Miss better than Georgia. And in this game, like breaking it down, X's and O's, style of play, who do I think should win? I do think Ole Miss should win this game. But it's that home field aspect because I can't get past the fact that you won 33 straight and then you're just going to lose 2 in a matter of, 3-4 weeks? I can't see it happening. I think Georgia somehow finds a way, like they did that Tennessee game, to scrape by, like they did that Auburn game, to flip it around the second half, right? This Kirby Smart, he's getting everything he can out of this team. It's by far not the most talented Georgia team he's had, nor the best, but I think one more time they find a way to squeak out a victory. And like I said, on paper, I think Ole Miss should win this game. I think they are the better team than Georgia. I truly do, but I think Georgia, I've just seen them too many times back against the wall, find a way to pull out a victory people didn't think they could get. And if you're doubting Georgia, they're probably going to pull through. I say this like they're the underdog. Ole Miss is the underdog in this game by almost a touchdown, I think. Or maybe it is a touchdown. So I'm kind of in the minority of thinking Ole Miss is better than Georgia for the record. But yeah, I certainly have my doubts. But I am going with the Bulldogs to get the win here. I will say something like 28-24 Georgia. Continuing with these high-profile SEC games, another one I just mentioned, Ole Miss and Georgia, two of the teams in the class of the conference, Tennessee and Alabama right there. So this is a big week for the SEC in terms of establishing this pecking order because we've already gotten Georgia beat Ole Miss but is really close. Alabama beat Georgia but is really close. Ole Miss is undefeated, but they haven't played anyone in that top class because I don't put LSU there. Tennessee is trying to get a second chance to prove, no, we're not secondary. We can compete with the big dogs. So there's a lot in the SEC that is going to be established this week. And this is a game I think you can expect tons of offensive fireworks. These are two of the elite offenses in the country, specifically in the passing game. With Alabama, and the numbers are down a little bit than they were a few weeks ago, but that's what's going to happen when you play opponents like Georgia, Vanderbilt, and Missouri back to back to back. Those are really strong teams, and particularly Missouri, really strong defenses. Georgia and Vanderbilt, no disrespect, also good defenses. So when you're playing that challenging of a schedule, it'd be crazy to think they'd still be at the elite numbers as opposed to Tennessee, who's playing Arkansas, who's not as strong, Mississippi State, who's not as strong, and you can pad the stats a little more. But so two absolutely electric passing offenses. Ty Simpson been playing some of the best ball in the country at anything post Florida State. He's been pretty spectacular, super accurate. Ryan Williams has seemed not himself, so if he's not fully healthy, the passing attack maybe not as strong, but still Horton has stepped up. Jerry Bernard maybe better than Ryan Williams even when he's healthy. And if you throw Ryan Williams in there, this passing attack should absolutely light up Tennessee. And that's where I think the differences in these defenses are kind of drastic because for as much as they both have the offensive firepower and elite wide receiver cores, I didn't even mention what Mike Matthews and Chris Brazzler are doing for Tennessee is also spectacular, and Joey Aguilar has been great. Tennessee is in the bottom 20 pass defenses in the country. So Alabama is one of the best, playing one of the worst. They're going to torch them. Tennessee has let almost everyone torch them. Mississippi State's not an electric passing offense. They torched them. Arkansas is good, but they torched them. Georgia has not proven they can do it to anybody else, and they put up, 44 on Tennessee. So this defense is super vulnerable, and Alabama should absolutely torch them through the air. On the flip side, Alabama's been the number 3 pass defense in the country if you're looking at pass yardage, which is a statistic I was looking at. But either the point stands, they've been one of the better passing defenses. Now, Tennessee is better than any of the passing offenses they played, and I expect to still put up points. But the point is, if one of these defenses is going to get some stops or slow down the other passing attack, everything points to it being Alabama. And then Tennessee, I think if they're going to pull off this win here, because there's no doubt they are the underdogs traveling on the road to Tuscaloosa, and they seem to have more vulnerabilities than an Alabama team that 3 weeks in a row has just been knocking off top opponents. I think it's going to come from generating pressure, because as weak as this defense is and its limitations guarding both the run and the pass, the one thing they do really well is get to the quarterback. They're one of the best sack teams in the country, and Alabama has allowed 4 sacks in back-to-back weeks. Vanderbilt got 4, Missouri got 4. If Tennessee's a better pressure team than both of those, getting to the quarterback, maybe getting a strip sack like Missouri did, which could have cost Alabama the game, that kind of play could be how Tennessee can pull the upset here. And the other thing that is just, I'm not predicting it anymore, is Alabama. I said this last week. When you play Georgia and you have to get up because it's Georgia on the road, that's a huge get up spot. And then Vanderbilt, the revenge game, college game, a huge get up spot. I thought you could have the letdown at Missouri, but no, you still played great. But you now have to get up 4 weeks in a row now for the third Saturday, October, another rivalry in Tennessee. The schedule for Alabama has been brutal. Could it finally be getting to them? For my prediction here, look, I've picked Alabama games 3 weeks in a row. I picked against them against Georgia, wrong. Picked them for Vanderbilt, right. Picked against them for Missouri, got it wrong. And I've been trying to predict the letdown spot. This team doesn't look like it's letting down. The defense is stronger and the offense is just as good. They have home field. I'm done predicting against Alabama at this point. Roll Tide in this one in a high scoring, call it 41-31 tie. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this one. It should be a really fun one to watch, but yeah, I'm going with the Crimson Tide to get the W. Another rivalry game this week between 2 top 25 teams. In my poll, I think I ranked this Notre Dame, I think it was 10, USC 12. In the AP, I think it's 13 versus like 18, something like that. But either way, a very high profile matchup in a big rivalry game in which we hope as a college football collective, this is not the last time we get to see this game. Please renew this rivalry. It seems like Notre Dame is more willing to than USC is. But yeah, I really hope they continue to play this. It is one of the great rivalries in the sport and a game you look forward to watching every year as a college football fan, or at least I do. Personally, would hate to see this be taken away. We've already lost too many rivalries recently. Games like Bedlam, like the other day, like Oklahoma State's terrible now, but when Oklahoma was playing Texas, I thought, like, remember the Oklahoma State rivalry? Like, you just miss that, and you hate to see those things go away. We're losing so much in college football with how much the sport has changed. You want to keep as much as you can, at least I do as a traditionalist for the sport. Now let's talk about the game. This is another one, like Alabama-Tennessee, which is a potential shootout because we've seen USC is probably, or I won't say probably, but definitely in the conversation for the best offense in all of college football. They have put up some of the most yards. They are the highest points per game offense. Jaden Maieva's been playing like a top 10, maybe 5 quarterback in the country. Mekhi Lemon's been playing like the best receiver in the country. And they're balanced, right? They're one of the top yards per pass teams. They're one of the top yards per rush teams. And last week, Waymon Jordan gets hurt. He's not playing this game, but your backup goes down as well. You put in the third string freshman, and he plays just as well against Michigan's defensive front, which though I know it struggled a lot against USC, it's not like that's a bad defensive front. They're maybe not as good as like I thought they were going to be. I thought they were one of the better, run defenses in the country. Not the best, but in the upper echelon. Maybe they're not that, but either way, they're certainly not bad. And USC still absolutely handled them. I think that proves they're going to put up points on anybody. And Notre Dame's defense at times this year has been vulnerable, but it's important to talk about how improved their defense has looked in the past few weeks, because Arkansas played them 3 weeks ago, put up 13 points, and their coach got fired. Right, so that's pretty good considering what has Arkansas done. Well, they put up 31 against Tennessee, and they put up 35 against Ole Miss and 31 against Memphis. So they played good teams. They put up points. Notre Dame's defense, which, yes, it struggled against A&M severely, stepped up, shut them down. Then they played Boise, who they held to 7 points and picked out Maddox Madsen, I think 4 times, if I remember correctly. So, and Leonard Moore came back and instantly improved the secondary, getting multiple picks. And then they played NC State, who's been pretty productive offensively through the air, and CJ Bailey's been a decent quarterback in terms of yardage and stuff like that. And they hold NC State, who had scored what, 35 against Virginia and beaten them. They scored 33 against Duke and been very competitive. This team was putting up points. You held them to 7 points and picked them off. CJ Bailey 3 times. So you have 7 interceptions in your last 2 games. The pass defense has looked drastically improved, and it is finally playing like a Notre Dame defense. And I think that's a scary thing because we've also seen how good this offense can be with the weapons they have. Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price in the backfield. And CJ Carr has been, maybe not Jaden Maeva level, but he's been a really strong quarterback. And USC's defense, I know it looked decent against Michigan. CJ Carr's throwing that thing a lot better than Bryce Underwood is. These Notre Dame receivers are a lot better than Michigan's receivers, that's for sure. And the run game is better. It's just all around nothing like what they faced in Michigan. It's better than what they faced in Illinois, and Illinois seemed to move the ball at will. Overall, this is just a chance to make a statement for both these teams, right? If USC, you beat Michigan, that's a really good win, but you were home team favored. It's not a true statement win. You go on the road to South Bend, Indiana, and beat these guys, that's a statement. And on the Notre Dame side of things, I'm one of the people who believe Notre Dame is one of the elite teams in the sport this year. I think Miami is a top 5 team, maybe the best in the country. I think Texas A&M is a borderline top 5 team. Ranking-wise, top 5 in terms of how good they actually are. They're right there still. You lost off a botched extra point. And those were your first 2 games for a young team with a young quarterback and a young or at least defense that was struggling. The defense is ramping up. The team is growing. They're all getting better. And I think if they play those games again, I think they've already demonstrated they're on par with Miami. They're on par with Texas A&M, 2 of the best teams in the sport. If that's correct, Notre Dame will prove just how good they are, and they will handle USC, I think, by double digits. I'll say something like 41-28 or 42-28. I think the Irish prove a point. They are one of the best teams in the country. The first 2 weeks, they got a little bit unlucky, and they weren't quite as good as they are now. I think they are now amongst the elite in the sport, truly capable of winning a national championship. They get a huge, huge win, an impressive victory against the rival Trojans. And the final game we are predicting, it is the holy war between rivals, 3rd straight rivalry game. There's some big rivalry games this week. Utah travels to Provo, Utah to take on the BYU Cougars, now a conference matchup in the Big 12. And this is a game, I think it's going to be some smash mouth football. I think both teams are going to look to run the ball because that is just their style of play. Utah, Devon Dampier being a running quarterback and them being one of the best rushing attacks in the country. That's how they always want to play. And you combine that with the fact that BYU's defense is best, or one of its best attributes is that they've picked off opposing quarterbacks a lot, generated turnovers in the passing game. So there's no inclination or really motivation for Utah to want to throw the ball. Only bad things are green screen adjustment. Only bad things are likely to happen. Sorry about that. But so BYU then on the other side, Utah's strength is definitely their pass defense, not in the run defense. And you're already a better run team than a passing game. So both teams are strictly going to want to avoid passing the ball. Running the ball is going to make for an old-fashioned, just good on good physical football game. And that's why I think it's going to be so important to see who has the better run defense and who has the better offensive line. And that's why I'm picking Utah to win this game. I'm cutting right to the chase here. I don't fully buy into this BYU team. I think Arizona should have beat them. I think Colorado easily could have beat them. And I think Utah is a class above both those teams. I think we saw last week when they played ASU that their physicality is kind of, on the offensive line especially, is able to dominate pretty much any D-line in the Big 12, not named Texas Tech. And I know they struggled a lot against Texas Tech, but we've since come to learn that's probably the best run defense in the entire country. That defensive line is truly elite. That's not what BYU has. I think Utah pushes them around a little bit. I think they win this game, I'll say by a touchdown. 24-17 Utes get the big rivalry. I think Utah is maybe the second best team in the Big 12. I think BYU is in the mix with a bunch of the other teams below that. So yes, I know BYU's at home. I know they're undefeated. I'm not fully buying it. And hey, you could prove me wrong again. I picked U of A last week, and then I got another pick wrong because of it. So you prove me wrong again. But if I had to put my money on it, I'm going Utah. I just think they're better on the lines of scrimmage in a game that's going to be all about physicality. So it's clear pick for the Utes for me. With that being said, that is the last prediction we have for today's episode. So that's 6 games. We've got Alabama over Tennessee, Georgia over Ole Miss, Utah over BYU, Notre Dame over USC, Duke over Georgia Tech, and Vanderbilt over LSU. If you guys enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to help it grow. And feel free, please actually comment your picks. Who do you have winning these games, or are there games you're more interested that I didn't cover? Feel free to let me know. I thank you guys all for watching, and I'll be back Thursday with new NBA content for the first time this year if you're interested in that. Until then, I'll see you next time.